that crash out. Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. And it's okay, Sean, because that wouldn't come out, and I just kind of ruined it. Each show will have a talk about a Linux project, such as Linux distribution, a desktop environment application. We also chat about the news or any variety of topics from the community, anything that's Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the Open SUSE project. With me today, I've got a fantastic panel of people. I've got Jinda, Eris, Cruz, Sean, Eric, and I had white chocolate here, but apparently he ducked out, didn't like my face or something. Don't know. But anyway, how is everybody?
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Good, how are you?
Yeah, I'm great.
Very awesome.
I had a very productive day today. Like cleaning up stuff on my cubicle farm, as it were. So spring cleaning. Although it's really muddy. We had so much rain, and so that's kind of not as much fun. But I got some muck boots that go up to my knees, and I only had to go up to my ankles in mud, so it was all right. All right. Well, hey, be sure to do the straw poll. If you have not done so, this is a great straw poll. Why did you come to Linux? What is the reason that why do you use Linux, I should say. So check out that straw poll. Pretty awesome. In my mind, I think Tux Penguin should get all the votes because, I mean, who doesn't want to vote for a smug penguin looking at you like you've done something wrong? So anyway, on the docket for today, we're going to talk about that straw poll, do our open mic night, last call. But first, what are we doing on Linux and tech? Eric, I'm not sure, you talked about audio editing, using AI, not using AI, and I think this is kind of an interesting thing since AI is in all the news lately. So how are you using it or not with it in audio editing?
I've had varying opinions of AI, and you have to really separate the marketing from the reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen some interesting use cases for it, and certainly, as we were talking, maybe generating, give me a headline for this story, and you give it a summary. There's definitely some uses where it's a way to get a quick idea, something you can then take and expand on. Sort of jogging something, loose. If you're stuck, something like that. But I was also thinking, and I'm sure if it's not already out there, somebody's working on it. But I've been doing a lot of audio editing lately, and to some extent, it's repetitive in the sense that you're taking out like retakes of a line if you're trying to say something and you mess it up and you're like, well, let me just start over, and you start talking again. How can you flag sections like that in the audio itself that, let's say that we've already got automation for removing silence, for removing coughs, for removing even connector words like and things like that. It would be great. Let's say if the
I have lots of crutch words.
I can't help it. It's amazing. I'll speak and record something and not realize how bad it is, especially I throw in there so often. I use so all the time. Yep. And when you're editing, it's like, jeez. And so to be able to flag those and not necessarily, so I don't necessarily trust it really at this point to completely edit it and to remove things simply because I don't know that it would understand context well enough to be able to make those kinds of decisions that I would be happy with. Be afraid that it would either take out things that I wanted to leave, whatever. So really what would be important to me again is how do I get through this more quickly than listening to every second of it myself and editing it very slowly? How about it flags anything? Let's say it makes captions. It understands who's speaking, how many people there are, those types of things, and then can somewhat cleverly determine what areas of focus might be interesting for you when you're editing repetitive content. So like I said, if you started something and said 5 words and then said, wait a second, I'm going to start over, maybe it even recognizes the phrase start over, something like that. But then it just not necessarily do it for me, but show me all of those edit points so that I don't have to listen to everything else and just focus on those areas. It also can take care of the other things like, levels and some of the sort of mastering and production part of it. And like to be able to basically take a job that could take many hours, depending on the length of, let's say, a podcast episode, and make it minutes, I think that would be a really good use. And that's what I've been trying to do is focus on the positive aspects. I mean, yes, of course, it's displacing some professions and maybe not the most positive thing for some people, but I think also there's ample room for this technology to be helpful. And that's just one area for me personally that I think would be really neat.
So it's interesting you say that. So Eris sent me a video, and I kind of like, I almost kind of like reacted to the video before even fully watching it, just because it was a Jon Stewart, and I used to love Jon Stewart, and now I feel like he's kind of like a has-been hack. But this is actually a good video that about his response to AI, and I've been thinking about this, like, at every turn in the Industrial Revolution, there has been it's been very job disruptive, right? Every time the
Hmm.
technology, and I've thought about this actually a lot. Like so sorry, Eris, I didn't mean to, like, if I sounded like a turd, I apologize in my response. I just want to publicly
He was
apologize.
actually being a Tardaris. Don't believe him.
Anyway, so there was I think that there is some concern for AI, but I think that there is a blending of adopting technologies in such a way that they're not destructive to the human experience, but are an enhancement to the human experience. And so there was some of the clips that kept going on there was about how all these businesses are basically replacing humans with AI. And I think that there are some jobs that's okay. We used to have tons and tons of people in the fields picking cotton, and now we have machines that do it. And I kind of think, that is an improvement. So, there are some improvements there, I think. Then also, as the Industrial Revolution went on, we have robots that replace a lot of the repetitive tasks where people are actually getting injured in the manufacturing process, either from overuse injuries, and so forth. And so they did a lot to make manufacturing safer and I think more efficient. And then really we have technology now that I have a 3D printer. And so what would that be displacing? Well, that's displacing me having to whittle wood together, or, pieces of wood, or making out of clay or some other material. So it is displacing one thing for another, but I think it's overall an enhancement for the human experience, because I can imagine something and bring it to life without, just on my own. But I think there's a community aspect that I think we have to be careful of, and how we thread this, because we don't want to replace real human connection with technology. I don't think. I think that's the danger there. But if you are cutting out, frankly, there is a place for rough cuts that I think automation is going to make it better for people. Like, it makes it better for everyone across the board, because nobody really likes doing that. Maybe some people do. Then you can keep doing that. It's not going to stop you. But then I thought about this further, and so you hear a lot of these large businesses laying off people for automation, and then I thought, well, doesn't that it's a disruptor, right? But doesn't that also open up new opportunities for people who now we don't need, maybe perhaps we don't even need these large businesses? I think it's going to ultimately hurt large businesses and give more individuals more opportunities, is what I think is actually going to happen. I think if you are, if you're a hustler and you want to make money, you want to do things on your own, you don't want to work for somebody, work for the man, I think that opens up more possibilities for you if you're imaginative. So I think that the human, there is a risk, of course, but I think there's actually a lot more possibilities as a consequence. So it's just a matter of how we take these new opportunities, these new technologies, and use it in a positive way, and not for something evil. That's what I think. So
Well, I think it could be used for
both.
one or the other or both. Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think it's likely that it'll be used for both. And
Oh, for sure.
um, I think that there's a exuberance that's unjustified right now on the behalf of, let's say, some companies where they feel like, oh, we don't need any support people anymore because we have this chatbot that can answer all the questions. And the reality is, of course, it's never going to be good as an educated human being is. Um, it will probably do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of if you just had a simple question and it was smart enough to get the context of what you're asking and even have some interaction to narrow down what you're asking about, then yeah, there's value there. But I think the part that I am most concerned with is that that's a what, an 80% solution, where there's still going to be plenty of cases where it has to be escalated. Someone has to be able to help you if there's a real problem that, goes beyond the normal situations. And I am a little worried that they take it too far and they say, well, we don't need anybody because this is a good enough technology. And, we've seen standards slide in some industries to the point where we kind of just, what are you going to do? You have to sort of accept that the customer service at your utilities company is not great, or, and how do you even sort of voice your discontent if you can't even get a hold of anyone? So there's stuff like that where I think, yes, there's this early sort of just it's the new hammer and
Hmm.
everything's a nail, and we're just going to see what it actually is effective at. I think the other thing that may be a little disconcerting to people is that in a lot of cases with technological evolutions, revolutions, it's taking away sort of the more dangerous work or the drudgery or the maybe the harder work, that most people don't want to do.
Tedious,
Whereas
like the
this,
tedious work.
yeah, repetitive. But like you mentioned, robots in, let's say, automotive factories, I mean, making those welds and all of that stuff perfectly every single time, it's a standard that you can't expect a human being to reach, Certainly not at the speed at which that they, need it to be done or whatever. So there's
Hmm.
certain things where automation has just taken over, and it wouldn't even make sense to try to do it by hand anymore, because that's just the standards are such that it has to be that high. But anyway, I think what's a little different in this case is that a lot of the sort of, let's say, analyst position, graphic design, engineering to some degree, there are certain aspects of AI that challenge things that I think a lot of professionals would have never expected. And it also did it very quickly, and no one's quite sure where it's leading. So I think there's just a lot of uncertainty, and it makes people uncomfortable, you know. So even though there might be really obvious good things, there's still enough unknown, potentially bad things that I think people are uneasy.
What was the and I think it was I think it was just a tale. It wasn't an actual event, but it was like the when they're laying tracks. It was the guy, the strong dude, versus the machine that
John Henry.
John Henry. Was that
Yeah.
wasn't a real story? That's a
No,
fable,
it
right?
was a
It's a fable.
it was a made up. Yeah,
Yeah.
the version I know is from Henry Belafonte. He sang that as a song. Uh, I think it came from the legend of, yeah, just like Babe the Blue Ox and cutting down all the forest. I mean, yeah, there were these sort of tall tale type
Hmm.
things, but yeah, you're right. It was the man versus machine, and
Yeah.
you know,
This is not a new tale, and
right.
I mean, although I think AI has the potential of doing a lot of damage. I think if left unchecked, having the summation of human knowledge as opposed to just driving some stakes into the ground to hold some rails in place or welding a unibody of an automobile. But I don't know.
Did you see story about fake law firms sending these DMCA notices about images on people's websites that they claimed they had the IP to, but they really didn't. But it was enough to sort of scare. And what they wanted, they didn't want money. What they claimed they wanted was attribution. And so they wanted you to put a link back to their site. And what they were trying to do was do SEO, creating backlinks, because you can still game Google by doing these like manual backlinks and sort of spamming. But that's so they were trying to build SEO power through AI bots, pretending to be a law firm, sending very realistic looking legal notices of a DMCA takedown,
Hmm.
which is a real thing. Like, people will use copyrighted images, and there are people that just look for copyrighted images. And if they find you using them, they will. I mean, I've had it happen to me. I was using a image that I was given by a customer, and you have to just sort of trust that they're giving you something they have the rights to use, and they didn't. I got an email saying you have to stop using this or you're going to get fined and
Hmm.
whatever. So we just replaced it with a different image. It's not like it's a big deal, but if you don't, um, I know maybe for some people it would be, and so the option to just do this attribution with the link. Um, anyway, that's just an example of, and I've heard a lot about AI scams where they're cloning people's voices. So my grandmother has had this happen, I think 2 or 3 times now, where someone has called and impersonated me, pretending to be me. And they do this thing where they're like, they're making it intentionally difficult to understand what they're saying. Because it's someone speaking, but it's not someone that would sound like me or know
Hmm.
my situation. They say, "Oh, Grandma, I'm in jail. I need help, or I'm hurt. I'm in the hospital. You need to send me money." And she told me about this, and I'm like, I can't believe it. So I went and read. So the next generation of that is, instead of trying to fake my voice and muffle their own to make it sound, convincing, they're actually finding people where they can get samples of their voice. And it only takes a few seconds of your voice to build a model off of. And then they like build whole scripts of, you know, and it sounds so convincing because it's your voice, just, through AI. So that kind of stuff is definitely very dystopian,
Mm-hmm.
right?
For sure.
But as we've seen, there's plenty of other just as positive, just as strong positive examples. So I don't know.
Yeah, and um, I've been having some fun with it though too. I mean, I realize. Hello, Swift. Good to have you. It looks like you're in a subway. Eat fresh. Not that kind of subway.
Rave.
A what?
He's working on it.
He's in the rave.
Oh, he's in the rave. Yeah.
All the flashing lights.
Be good times, right? Linux plus rave equals something. I don't know what yet. But yeah. I looked up using Microsoft Copilot. That's one I've been playing with because they made it easy to play with. I asked who Cubicle Nate was, and it actually I thought gave a pretty good answer. And then so I asked, well, is Cubicle Nate all talk? Does he actually know anything? And actually it cited a bunch of examples why Cubicle Nate knows things. I thought, oh, I guess I forgot. Anyway, I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
Look yourself up.
Well, so that's actually something interesting to think of. Like, let's say you had an assistant, an AI assistant, they would never forget anything,
It's
right?
true. Yeah.
There'd always be that that history where we tend to forget lots of things. And yeah, that would be well, you remember the time you did this? I'm like, oh my goodness. No. Can you just erase that?
Whiskey says in the chat, says Linux, Rave Linux maximum RGB. I agree.
Mm, no doubt.
Anyway, yeah, I guess I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think AI is the new crypto, and it'll serve a purpose. But I think once the technology kind of settles out, and we'll see the actual value of it versus the, and hopefully we will. I think as a society, we're not going to want to destroy the human element of things. I think. I'm hoping. I have optimism bias, though. I agree. I think everything will be fine. I'm not worried about it. Got my chickens, got my goats. Yes, Eris.
So you say that, but I would like to point out that people like the idea of not seeing other people, and that's very normal now. You order things online so they get delivered to you, and people even say, just leave it at the door. Do not wait for me to come to the door.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that.
And there's also self-checkout. People look forward to self-checkout instead of talking to somebody at the cashier.
That's okay. Now, frankly, yes, I'm one of those people, but I do want to say it's because I don't like being judged by people, and I don't want to judge what I'm buying.
I think that should be a rule for every store. Like the cashier should not judge you or comment on whatever you're buying at all, ever. But some of them do.
They don't have to comment. I'm just assuming.
Well,
So
they
like,
do sometimes comment. I've gotten cashiers that have said, "Oh, you're buying this," and I'm like, "Yes."
yeah, I have an after show story about something I bought, and I'm glad I used the self checkout. But anyway, my local grocery store, they have cashiers there, and I don't mind that. That's fine. And like when I go to Aldi, I'll use the self
Self checkout.
checkout if I'm doing a small amount. But if I have a larger amount, then I'll go through the have somebody else do because they're way quicker than I am. But I don't know. I think a mix of is good though. You know, I still talk to people. I just I don't like being funneled into having to talk to somebody. Maybe I don't know.
I think it kind of goes back to that 80/20 again, right? Maybe 80% of people are just fine with either they have so few items that going through self-checkout makes sense anyway because, you only have a few things and it's just faster, or you just don't want to talk to someone. And they've maybe made the self-checkout a little easier than this like tiny little square with a bag on the side. Like they gave you enough room to actually,
Hmm.
that might be nicer, right? Make it a little bit better of experience. And then for the 20% of people that would rather have a person, or like you said, or maybe there's a big order that, they're faster than you are. Great. There it is. You have access to it. So, uh,
More
I think it
choice.
is, it always comes down, yes, the choice is good. No choice is bad, whether that choice is all people or all self-checkout, right? I used to think self-checkout was terrible and like how dare these stores like I don't work for them. I'm not their employee. I shouldn't have to like bag my things. Like that's ridiculous. And now I'm like, yeah, I think I'll just go to the self-checkout.
Hmm.
You know, to be the other thing though is it has gotten much better. I swear at first it always failed in some way. And so that you'd have to call them over anyway. Um, but it has gotten much better. Although, did you see that Amazon is stopping their camera scan?
Their AI system for
Yeah,
Amazon Fresh, which was just 1,000 people in India keeping track of everybody via cameras and making sure everything was working.
yeah, isn't
Hmm.
that crazy?
It is.
So they had 1,000 humans behind it, AI. So that should maybe show you how powerful AI really is. But uh, anyway, I think it's a bit of a shame because I think that was one of those sort of technology credibility things. Like, oh, look how cutting edge and high tech. But yeah, they just I guess couldn't make it work.
Don't look at the man behind the curtain, right?
Well, it is. I guess they thought they would figure it out and make it so that they didn't need all those people, or maybe they started thinking it would work better and then realized that they needed more labor, or I'm not really sure. And it would be interesting if they would be more forthcoming with it and, just kind of say like, well, we had this idea for the technology and either people were abusing it or it wasn't working properly or it couldn't keep up or whatever the case was. I think it would be interesting as a retrospective to understand why something didn't work. And I think that's maybe why open source is more interesting from a software perspective, because you can kind of think of it in those terms as well. Because this was all Amazon's proprietary stuff, like no one's ever going to learn from this besides them.
Hmm.
So
It was my understanding that they were tweaking the system, and then that was like a fallback system. But the way it currently was, it was 70% uh they had to work with it. I think only 30% the system took care of it by itself. I think I may
Hmm.
be wrong with those numbers, but yeah.
It's interesting. Exciting times we live in. That's what I think. So Don in the chat says is adding and will continue to add such levels of efficiency that companies and individuals like artists who don't embrace it will be left behind because they can't compete on price. I think that's a possibility. I think that there's still going to be some. Yeah, I mean, yes, and
well,
yet people still buy organic milk. So I mean, there's always that.
there are a small percentage of people who still like having a painted portrait.
Hmm.
Right? That's gotten very small. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, there were a lot of portrait painters because that was a very, uh, desirable thing. And it's not to say that those jobs won't exist. It's probably true that they will compress quite a bit, especially as the technology gets better. I was just reading about the Luddites not long ago, and it wasn't just that the material that the looms were making was faster and cheaper, but it was also vastly inferior. Like the quality of it was terrible compared to what the human beings were making. So they not only had to adjust the way they were making the product, they had to adjust the consumer to accepting a lower quality item. which I feel like has happened in recent history uh, in a similar fashion with a lot of the things that I buy today. I feel like are very much more lightweight, very flimsy, something that you expect will probably not last nearly as long as maybe something you bought 40 years ago.
Right.
Um,
Pretty much every refrigerator on the market.
I was thinking appliances when I was saying that because
Dishwashers.
my wife wants to get a new washer, but she's like, I know it's going to break. I know I'm going to
Mhm.
have it for a couple years. I'll probably end up liking it, and then it's just going to start, hassling me because it's got too many computers.
So I remember my dad, he worked for a major appliance company called Whirlpool. Maybe you've heard of it. And we got a
No, no.
dishwasher in the 90s. I remember this. And that dishwasher was so powerful. You could and one of the marketing things they did is that you could throw a Big Mac in there and it would actually eat and dissolve. It was so powerful. A Big Mac. And it was a great performing dishwasher. And that thing, I don't know why it was ever replaced. I cannot recall, but it was after I left. I mean, it was long after my father even passed away. And so I often think about that. Like the dishwasher I have today, I'm like, well, hopefully it gets this reasonably clean, so I don't have to wash it again. So I know a lot of it's for like EPA reasons, for using less water or this or that, and I think
Mhm.
I think you end up just wasting more water just to meet some benchmark, and I think it's all garbage, but whatever, whatever. And then
I was thinking in terms of cars as well because, and this isn't definitely not true. I think in the 90s there was a bit of a peak of automotive technology. There was enough.
do you mean a valley, a
No, no, I
pot
mean
a
the peak.
pothole? Oh, you
No,
mean
no, I
you
mean
mean the best? Okay, all
yeah.
right, go ahead.
I mean, it was sort of the intersection between, older sort of mechanical things that before everything became, plastic, recyclable, um, you know, built to a dollar point, maybe necessarily. I'm not sure the best way to say it, but I feel like the car itself was still a solid machine. And then you still had, catalytic converters and fuel injection and better performance out of a smaller engine. So you had all of this sort of convergence of technology. And I feel like a lot of those cars, you basically getting the same gas mileage as we're getting today.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, I see what you're
and a
saying.
lot of
Yeah.
that. So I feel like they were able to achieve a lot of what they had set out to from a mechanical standpoint and a technology standpoint at that point in time. And things, certain things have gotten better, maybe safety, convenience, some of the lane assist. I don't know, some of those creature comforts, something like that. But ultimately, what the studies have shown is that people don't want to keep a car as long as someone like me might want to keep a car. Like I would love to be able to keep a car for an indefinite period of time as long
Mm-hmm.
as I wanted to.
Right.
The truth is that they're built to a certain standard.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is because people tend to keep a car for the warranty period or maybe a few years past that. And then they sell it off and they get a different car. And that's because either they want a new car or they're trying to have a certain image. And people are willing to spend a lot of money on cars specifically. And so manufacturers said, well, why would we build a car that would last longer than the consumer wants to keep it?
That's what the appliance industry said too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a
So, but appliances that's funny because I would think that what's the great advancement in technology in appliances? They're really,
it's about the
aren't.
appearance, and if
Yeah.
people freshen up their kitchens, they sell their get rid of the old appliances. They want new appliances that have a certain look to it or whatever.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
The great advancement is you can connect it to the internet now.
It can tell you when you're out of milk. Yeah,
yeah.
right.
I don't
You've
know.
only got 3 eggs left.
Oh no. Well, for me, I just walk out and grab some more out of the chicken coop.
That was the setup. You went ahead and dunked that for me.
It's true.
Um, yeah. So I'm definitely curious to see how this washer works out
The washer. You got a new washer?
because, well, so she's been waiting. They put it on sale pretty regularly, and so she's been
Wait,
waiting.
is it a clothes washer or dishwasher?
Close.
Clothes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Top
So
load or
we
front
had
load?
a front load.
Front load.
So we've always had top loads.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she wanted to try a front load this time.
I
But
only
she's
do
been
front loads
putting it
anymore.
off. Okay. Well, we had a repairman come and swear up and down that LG was the best brand for washers, and that they're the ones that he repairs the least. And I don't know. I don't know who to believe. I think it's all a crapshoot, honestly. So
Yeah. So I think I can't remember the number of cycles they basically have the washer. They build the washers too, but when I worked for a major appliance manufacturer, there was an actual number there that they built it toward, because if they added X amount more to in components to make it last longer, they wouldn't get that back. Like the consumer would not reward the manufacturer. That's essentially what it boils down to. And so obviously that's not so much me. I don't like buying appliances. Are a pain in the butt because you have to get rid of the old appliance and then put in a new appliance.
yeah.
It's not like changing batteries in a toy. It's a lot more arduous process. But anyway, there was that aside. I didn't work for LG, but LG has it's one module, but it's a dryer and washer, but it's like a full size dryer washer front load,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
it's a really nice combo unit. Like in my mind, I'm thinking, I didn't work for LG, but that looks really nice, and I know somebody who
Yeah.
bought one, and I wonder how it's working out for them.
Hmm. Yeah, I would think that there would be enough complexity in there that, and also just the idea of having the water components and I don't know. It to
You're
me
mixing
that
water,
sounds like it.
electricity, and heat.
Yeah, yeah. How do you get
Bad
it dry
idea.
enough? Um, although I guess the spin, I don't know. I don't know. I would think also the components would probably have to be a lot smaller, and perhaps, made of plastic. I've been watching automotive stuff lately, and it's incredible to me when they open an engine, how much of the internal components are plastic. And I know that, plastics are amazing. You can build, high resiliency plastics that can withstand temperatures and blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I still, when I see a piece of plastic in an internal combustion engine, I'm like, I just don't think that's as good as a piece of metal,
Yeah.
you know? So
Yeah. It
anyway,
really depends on what that what's in that plastic. There's so many variables in that plastic.
yeah, no, I
So
get it. And it's weight savings, which is fuel economy, and it all makes sense. It's not like it's not like an accident or an oversight. Somebody obviously has put a great deal of thought behind every single little facet of that type of product. So I get
so
it.
in the chat, Mike Chilson says, "My experience with appliances over many years is the simpler the better." I think
Hmm.
there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
but that's the problem is everything new
Now,
is
I I will give you my pitch on why front load is better than top load, and it's just from
okay.
actual empirical data. So when I did work for an appliance manufacturer, they had like test loads they would use, and there was largely like towels and things like that. And when they would test them in both the top load and front load, whatever. So when when the towels they use in the top load, because actually they would actually actually is my crutch word I'm using right now. When they would test these things, they would measure the amount of lint that's lost to determine how gentle or how rough it is on the clothes. So for the top load, when the fabrics would get to the point where they need to be thrown out, they would continue using them in the front loaders because they would last longer in the front loaders. So that was a
Yeah,
common practice. So if you think about the mechanics of when you're spinning clothes and passing them through the water, as opposed to
sure.
moving the clothes in the water, if that makes any sense. So you're
Well, and
you're
that
moving the clothes.
agitation,
Yeah.
back and forth, I think maybe lends itself to sort of a shearing motion, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
where
Yep.
it's putting stress. Whereas this way, you're just sort of,
Flopping them through.
dropping. Yeah.
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 And clothes
Yeah.
are weakest when they're wet. So for what it's worth.
Gotcha.
But anyway, we should probably actually talk about Linux. Um,
Well, AI is relevant. it's actually impressive to
Yeah.
see how far they're advancing in letting you run uh, train models and run AI stuff on really modest hardware.
Hmm.
Considering we started with needing, multi-gigabyte discrete GPUs, we're talking dozens of gigabytes worth of GPU memory to be able to do this. And I don't have any specifics in front of me, but I keep reading stories where it's like, oh yeah, the new one is you only need like a 1 gig card, and it's kind of impressive.
Yeah, it's true. Uh, but what I want to do is I'd like to get to that straw poll that we said we are going to get to.
Mm.
So I don't know, Eris, I don't know if you wanted to tee that one up.
So I'll start by the replies that I got, and let give everybody another chance to vote in case they haven't.
Yes, if you have not voted,
Um,
please do so.
the, the response I got was that's going to be freedom, flexibility for me. Booting into Windows recently reminded me of how annoying it is having to manually move Windows to another screen because I don't have cable and Windows rules there.
Okay.
Uh,
I mean,
and then there's
you know your things are pretty good in Linux when you're complaining about having to manually move Windows. Sorry, go ahead.
and somebody else said, for me, it's features you don't get in Windows, and freedom and flexibility for me too. Somebody else said, and then somebody put Linux is, and then colon, free to use, open source, customizable, easy to understand. Everything is a file used by /by/in cybersecurity, used by cool people,
Oh,
and then primary reason cybersecurity.
makes sense.
And then the final response I got was, I choose other because it has changed over time. Originally, I started using Linux to host web and game service because it was the best practice to do so. That turned into using it full time since it was easier to develop software for Linux-based operating systems while using a Linux operating system. Security or lack of meaningful malware and costs were later factors in completely migrating over. I could not afford Windows licenses for the many machines that I built. Also, I never really worried about viruses after that. Although I have had at least two websites end up being exploited due to vulnerable plugins and lack of knowledge about securing things. These days, it is just by default. I would need a solid reason to run Windows on a machine like for work or building out infrastructure for clients.
Hmm. I think Tux Penguin should have gotten more votes, just ultimately because, you know, see earlier reasons
I
stated.
chose I chose other, and my uh, response would be I kind of needed all of the above option because as I was reading through, it's kind of like, well, yeah, privacy, ease of use, fun to use, security, uh, cost, like all of those things, freedom, flexibility. Uh, if I had to make up my own, I would say I'm spoiled. I've said this to people before where sometimes I kind of wish like I just didn't know any better because when I'm frustrated with Linux, it's still better than Windows. And it's like if I was just an oblivious user who didn't know about Linux, I could just use my computer and never think about it. But now that I know about Linux, I could never happily use Windows.
Hmm.
It's like completely ruined for me. So
And
Yeah.
the results are, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The results are number one with 51% freedom and flexibility, followed by 11% privacy, 9% ease of use, 9% fun to use, 7% security, 6% other, 4% ease of programming, 2% cost, 2% Tux Penguin, and nobody actually picked no other choice for hardware.
Hmm.
That's it.
That's pretty cool.
would
I think
that be in?
this is the highest number of votes we've had on any straw poll. So good job, Eris.
Was the one that didn't get votes? Would that be something like where their system wasn't supported by Windows anymore?
Yeah, basically you can't put Windows, maybe
Okay,
you can't put Mac, or you can't put something
Hmm.
else on it. You only have
gotcha.
Linux to work with.
I mean, I think that is a reason, but not a primary reason for me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think freedom and flexibility is what I chose, although I should have chose Text Penguin in retrospect. But I think that the reason I say that is I find that I'm fickle about how I want to operate. And so, what I do kind of shifts and changes based on how either my workload or this season in my life, basically. And I think Linux does a better job of doing that for me. And I don't know about anybody else here, if they have the same kind of issue. Because there was that talk a long time ago of like, what's the perfect desktop defaults and blah 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 blah. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to change them anyway because even if I had everything set for the perfect defaults for me today, a month from now it's going to change. So I think that's a moving target for me. So there's not really like a perfect anything, or like how I use this computer here, although running KD Plasma, is set up differently than how I use my laptop, because I use them for different functions. And so they're both a little different. Not completely, but there's some very clear differences as to how this one operates than how the others. And I don't know that I could do that in Windows, if that makes any sense. So Don says, I've been hearing talk, maybe even here, or maybe here even, that Linux desktop distros are moving toward newer hardware rather than resurrecting old machines. I think there's a mix of it. You have some distros that do cling to running better on older hardware, and you have some distros that are more forward-leaning. Like I would say Fedora and Ubuntu are probably more forward-leaning overall, because their Ubuntu ends up in a lot of new products. You can buy brand new machines with Ubuntu on it. So Pop! OS would be in the same kind of category as well. And I think Fedora, because of the way they kind of run things, they're always on the leading edge, I would say, of testing new software stacks or systems and whatnot, that they're probably more can be leaning toward newer hardware. But then you always have Bunsen Labs, and you have MX Linux, and you have pretty much anything in the Debian. That'll work on older stuff too. And I'm not sure where OpenSUSE falls on that right now, but yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. So Terry, I know you are a huge fan of Antix. Would you say that's a distribution that will keep your old hardware running? Or, yeah, so there you go, Don. Use Antix. It's more that'll work on your older hardware. I think I'm gonna experiment with it this time. Like do some really good experimentation, I think. So, Swift, are you there, or are you're probably busy doing your rave thing? Is it? Yeah. Or Cruz? I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, Cruz. You're kind of new to Linux. I don't know what kind of hardware you're running. What would you say?
Still on. Which one? Which one?
No, it's like what do you what would you say based on your experience so far with Linux? Do you feel like it's, I don't know what kind of hardware you have. Do you feel like it's embracing your hardware all right?
Yeah, I still using the MX Minute, and it's coping well with my hardware, with my software. I first installed Antix. That works great as well, but I was having some challenges with the Bluetooth and the printer. The Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. The printer was working fine, but MX is going well with the hardware now. It's a old PC, old laptop that I got.
Okay. When you say old, what do you mean old?
About 8 years old or 9.
That's all right. I don't consider that old yet, but I don't know. Like when I started podcasting with Eric, not that long ago, that was that era of PC I was using for that, and it worked fine. And I could still use it today if I wanted to. In fact, it's right there. If you can see my finger, it's still chugging away, doing some fun things for me. So I don't know. I think 4th gen is still all right. 4th gen Intel,
Okay.
5th gen, it's fine. Eris, haven't heard you talk about your hardware very much. I don't know if do you have like newer hardware? Where does your hardware sit in the wide world of sports?
Ancient. It's
Ancient.
old. It's old.
So, can you define old in numbers, or do you not want to go that far?
I would say it's pretty old. It's pretty old. It's so old my NVIDIA cards is no longer recognized
Oh,
as supported. So I got to run the
Nouveau.
open source drivers. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's cool. So I see you're talking about the different versions of hardware. What will be supported?
Yeah, so I heard that OpenSUSE, Fedora, and Ubuntu were considering raising the limits of hardware that's supported. So do we need like Haswell, I think, or something like higher to get
Yes.
support?
And what
Um,
OpenSUSE backpedaled on that. So they had enough in the community that basically said, no, I still run this hardware. So they now have portions compiled with a V1 and also like V2 and I think V3 and later, something like that. Like a V1, V2, and also V3 and later. I believe that's what they have
yeah,
going right now.
I
So
think because Microsoft offers that, or I think that Ubuntu was trying to do something similar. Or no, or is it was it Red Hat does that? I think Red Hat was doing that,
it
something
could be,
like that.
yeah.
But Ubuntu has confirmed they will offer optimized cloud images that will have stricter hardware requirements.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think, for commercial functions, I think that
For
probably,
servers, I mean, you try to lower costs, right, by buying
right,
newer hardware,
right,
more efficient.
right, more efficient, more powerful, able to do more with less. And then also, where there's some vulnerabilities and such, I think have been pushed out of hardware as well. So, and it
I
doesn't make
think that's the next Intel chipset. We'll finally have hyperthreading turned off, I think.
really no more
I think
hyperthreading.
so. Because the cores are so big now that I think they figured that it's not even gonna matter anymore, the
Interesting.
core count.
Right, right. I wonder how that's going to shake out for things. 'Cause it
I
seems like
remember I remember they were saying about how OpenBSD, I don't know if you remember this, when they started out with the Spectre
your meltdown.
vulnerabilities,
Hmm.
they immediately turned off hyperthreading, and people thought that was way too cautious. But then more and more vulnerabilities are coming out, so they seem very wise doing that.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if. So I remember when the Spectre meltdown thing was a big how do you do? What was that, like 8 years ago now, 7 years ago, something like that?
I don't remember when that started, but
I
yeah,
think
it's been some time.
yeah, it was 2018, I think. So 5-ish, 6. Anyway, it
Six
doesn't matter.
years?
We don't need to do numbers. Math is hard. Or actually, it's hard when you do the math after the math. Um, I think that a lot of those exploits, because I was really following that pretty heavy for a while, and they were either really obscure, or a lot of them would be solved in better software as well. So like the kernel doing some things to mitigate such vulnerabilities, as well as the software itself running on the machines. So better browsers and so forth. So I think yes, and also some of the I don't have a Spectre meltdown, but some of those exploits, like they were not exploitable unless you had direct access to the
Local
machine.
access, I
Yeah,
think.
local access. So I
But
think
recently, I think some of those vulnerabilities have had a way to exploit them remotely.
mm,
Of course, because they know that's exploitable now, they have other mitigations that makes it more difficult. Um, I, I think and that's part of the reason that maybe they're not exploited because they're so not easy to exploit, especially with the mitigations. And like you said, like Firefox and the browsers, they're not built in with certain mitigations built in just to protect against those
mhm,
exploits now.
right. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's always anything that runs code is vulnerable to some level. That's just what happens. The biggest vulnerability is always the end user, beyond all things. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. If I can, what I really want to see is Intel and AMD start to really push or close that gap on the battery and battery performance and GPU performance of the M series for the Macs. Although I guess now the Macs are in a bad spot too, an unpatchable issue. So whatever.
And I guess that's kind of like the problem. They have these exploits and everything because they're trying to optimize and make more efficient, trying to the software, trying to guess what you're gonna do, and then that's part of the problem because all this leaves vulnerabilities open for somebody to exploit later, and it's all because of the drive to make it more efficient, quicker. Just like I guess the M chips now.
Yeah. I guess cool. Wait, I wish these people stopped ruining my technology. Stop putting wrenches in the machine. You're making me upset. Oh well, what can you do? Well, cool. So it is an open mic night, which means that any topics that you bring up is on the table for discussion, as long as it's family friendly, nothing weird. So, and about technology, Linux and open source. So I want to share a little thing with y'all. I did, I'm an IT manager now in my professional world, and I'm in a Microsoft heavy environment, and everything's Microsoft. So I really immersed myself in the first 3 months or so where I only use Windows. And I had a bit of a crutch with Linux machine, but I primarily just did everything I could on Windows to really be, understand the environment and everything else, and not try and make it work with Linux, because I wanted to be, good at my job. And as the time went on, I became just increasingly frustrated with my experience there, and I wasn't really enjoying it very much because the nature of the work and so forth.
I need an attack.
Well, hello. I don't like Windows either. So anyway, I ended up figuring out how to do basically a lot of the tasks more efficiently using OpenSUSE and Linux, and I published an article on it, basically a nearly seamless experience of using OpenSUSE in a Windows environment with Office 365 and everything else. And I can say I'm much happier now here, but I really tried. I gave it my maximum effort to use Windows to the best of my ability, but it just was so frustrating. And I can't exactly I can put my finger on a few things. So the way Windows handles focus control, like if I'm going into a spreadsheet to do something, then I click on something else, like an Outlook, whatever, to pull some other numbers up. I like to audit all my backups, and then keep track of my backups. I'm sure it could be automated, but if I'm not looking at it, how would I know? Because I should know, not an AI should know. So anyway, a lot of things. It was so frustrating going from, going between Excel and Outlook back and forth, trying to get the information out. So I made it more efficient by, using a Linux desktop essentially, and pulling that information out much quicker and not having the same kind of focus troubles. So I don't know, is there something, is it just, am I spoiled, or is it just, what would you say is my issue, why I just could not get along well with Windows?
You can drive a car, right? And
Yes.
and you could probably get into
I do
any
a lot.
car and drive a car. Let's say you had a drive every day back and forth to work, but you had to make it in a car that was kind of less intuitive, less comfortable, a little more difficult to drive. And let's say that's the analogy for Windows. And then you also had this alternative of driving a car that was much more comfortable, much more suited to the purpose. and let you actually achieve, and maybe driving the car is less applicable than, let's say, like a task around your house. Yes, you can do something and it would be, the outcome might be the same, but using this tool or set of tools takes you that much more time because it's just more cumbersome or it's less optimized for the task at hand. And that's sort of what I've come to whenever I use Windows, because I do the same thing. This system I'm using, I dual boot between Windows and Linux. And I can get things done on Windows, but it's just clunky. I just feel like everything I do takes me a little bit longer than Linux because everything just feels so optimized. Like I launch applications quickly. I switch between things. A lot of things I have keyboard shortcuts for. I was in Windows earlier today. I wanted to set a keyboard shortcut to mute my microphone. And you can't
Really?
without getting a third-party application. There is a way in Windows 11, but it only works with Teams and certain applications that have it built in properly. Otherwise, there's no way to set just a standard, like going into any Linux desktop environment, go to the keyboard properties, go to shortcuts, and you can set the keyboard shortcuts you want to set. Now, that seems like a trivial thing, but if you're a power user, using your keyboard and using shortcuts saves you a ton of time, like a ridiculous amount of time compared to grabbing a mouse and doing things that way. I don't take it to the degree of someone using a tiling window manager, but I do a lot of things with optimizing my workflow and the things that I'm working on. And when I go into Windows and I can't even map a shortcut key, it's slow. It's cumbersome. And that to me is the biggest difference. Not that I can't do those things, but it's just so much more difficult. So I don't think you're wrong or there's anything you're doing. I just think you're used to, like you said, you have taken OpenSUSE and you have molded it to your liking. And that's the way you do it. That's the way your mind works. That's the way your hands work. And when you go into another environment, I mean, the real test would be, could you do the same thing in Windows if you gave it enough time? And it sounds like, what did you say, about a month?
3 months.
You gave it? 3 months. That's a long time.
And I still use it. It's like I haven't stopped using it. I still use the machine because there's there's like one application that two applications that I can't get to work on Linux yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But once also there's the Office still works better in Windows than it does in Linux. But specifically Excel. Excel is just that's Microsoft's killer app. Like of everything that they have, Excel is like the best thing. Like that.
Yep.
Like I think
especially if you have to do any kind of data analysis or in managerial position, numbers, budgets. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, LibreOffice Calc is close. It's close. But Excel is just better. Like they have the whole like Visual Basic. You can like program some really cool intelligence into it, which I did a lot of that, at different times in my career. So Excel's just really pretty awesome.
Excel's one of those applications that you can literally specialize on and be like the Excel wizard for an entire office. And when someone needs something, like it's like, oh yeah, well, Joe knows how to do that. And it's like a skill set, Oh yeah, they know how to do Visual Basic or
right.
Well, if you remember, they used to have like the server group, the Windows group. Well, there used to be a group just for Office. And I'm pretty sure like Excel was very important to that. They used to say like so many rows have been added, and you're like, who uses that many rows? But somebody does. Somebody does.
Right. Yeah.
So Jay Lee says, I always preferred WordPerfect over Word and 123 over Excel. I never got into Lotus 123. I used Lotus Notes, and that was terrible. But never.
Do you remember back in DOS days though?
I remember that, but I didn't really use it. I was an Amiga user back then, so.
I always used Amy Pro, which was that was Lotus, and that was the best one to buy. That was insanely good. it had a CAD package in it,
Mm,
believe it or not. It was
that's
simplistic, but
already
it still
exciting.
had it. I know.
Everything was kind of simplistic, though, really. Oh, even Don Racklin
Pragmatic.
says,
Pragmatic.
I loved WordPerfect. I wonder if. Okay, I'm curious now. I'm kind of off the rails here.
WordPerfect. We used WordPerfect macros to do a lot of document processing. And I mean, I'm sure we could have found some alternative, but WordPerfect, like page templates and processing, I mean, it was so powerful what you could do.
It's still a thing. WordPerfect. Is it the same though? I wonder.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, it's $250. Could download a trial.
You know what? If their customer base is enterprise, $250 is nothing.
No.
So
It's not. That's correct. Good sir.
Yeah.
I'd like to get maybe WordPerfect for DOS. Maybe play with that again. 'Cause I know I used it. I just don't remember it very well. I remember I was the first class to not have a typing class when I went in high school. Like they transitioned us to, it was like an office technology, so it wasn't typing anymore. And so I was the first class back in the 90s.
You're a couple years behind me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
I was probably one of the last to have keyboarding. Is what
yeah.
they called it.
Yeah. It was like, but we used Microsoft Works though. I think was it Works? I can't remember. It was like Word except light or something like
Works
that.
was a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Works was like, Word, and it was like the home version of an Office or something.
And then now
They had templates. That's what made them different, I think.
they had templates or did not have templates.
Yeah, for like letters and like
okay.
essays and stuff like that.
I remember having fun with spreadsheets. That's actually where I first started to love spreadsheets. Was in high school. High school office technology. Like 1996.
Anything math related.
95.
Anything math related for me, I pull up a spreadsheet. If I'm trying to quantities, pricing, anything like that. When I was looking at real estate investment, I had a whole big convoluted like form process, and like you punched in square footage and comp prices, and I spent a lot of time on it, and mainly because I was enjoying doing it so much.
Mhm.
My wife was like, "What are you doing? Like, it doesn't need to be this complicated." I'm like, "Oh, but it does."
It does. It does.
Yes, it does. And then you start like locking cells so other people don't mess it up, and then you can. That's when you start to have fun with it. Yeah. Here, use this.
Yeah, if you share it, you gotta lock it, or otherwise they're gonna mess it up.
Well, the other one that we used, and it was kind of a hack in a lot of ways, was Access.
Mm-hmm.
You could do a lot with Access. We built a barcode scanning registration system, like an early precursor to an EMR, where all the documents had a barcode, and you could use basically a checkout scanner to scan the barcode, and yeah, it auto-filled a bunch of the stuff into the EMR, because then you could then pull up. So it was really just sort of a clerical thing, but we were like, well, how do we build it? And none of us were programmers. And we're like, I bet we could do that in Access. And you could.
Yeah, a buddy of mine, when I worked for long ago, when I worked for Uncle Sam, before Uncle Sam had all these databases that we could use at the local unit level, he built a pretty cool training management database, essentially, before, there are bigger ones that came into play. But yeah, it was pretty cool, everything you could do. But I was amazed by how people could still screw it up. Like you could lock things down, but like there is no limit to the incompetence of end users. I think that's a skill unto itself. I using Excel, I built a product essentially to help build training schedules for the entire year. it would be like a 1 week process normally where the command teams would get together and figure out when we're going to do all these different training things. And I'm like, I hated doing it. So I just put together an Excel spreadsheet, put some Visual Basic in there, so you can actually then on one master, on one sheet, you select whatever months you want, and then you'll do a little calculate click, and it'll build out all 12 months worth of training. And I said, there, I took a week's worth of work and made it 2 hours. Here you go. And nobody liked it. So whatever.
Oh, that happened to me so many times. By the way, I think my happy place, if I had to like pick the eternal situation for being in IT, would probably be what you're doing in like IT management for an office. Except that I'd probably want to be a little more hands-on day to day because I really enjoyed working with. I knew all the people in the office, you know, on a very friendly basis, and so I was just like the tech guy that kept. I basically enabled their jobs. Like my entire job was making their life work. You know, phone
Exactly.
systems, computer systems, networking, customer relations, all that stuff, you know, the building itself, you know, the systems. And I loved that. Like it was like being a sheep herder or like a gardener, you know, there was just some like tending aspect to it, you know.
Yeah.
And I would do that too. I would try to see a look at a problem and I'd say, well, man, it looks really hard doing it that way, or it looks really cumbersome. Let me think about that. And I'd come back with a solution. And it was always disappointing when they were like, nah.
No,
but it's better.
I do really like being hands on there. So it's a lot of fun. I did incorporate. Do you know what Screenly is? It's you take a Raspberry Pi,
Yeah.
like a digital display system.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was just a regular desktop computer that was basically above the ceiling tiles in the break room, and they would just have it run like PowerPoint slides. Well, I had chronic issues with it, so it would like either just shut itself off or it would stop playing things. It just kind of did whatever it wanted to do, and it was always you have to get a ladder, go there, reset it, turn it back on, whatever. So it just like shut itself off. We couldn't figure out why, and so I talked to like the training coordinator. So would you mind if I just changed this to something else? And so I put a Screenly, like a Raspberry Pi there. And so instead of doing PowerPoints, you actually load in assets individually so you can turn them on and off and schedule things in for a certain period of time. And that was actually fun because, well, it started out, like I said, just an announcement thing about the time clock. And then they said, oh, can we use that? And then I said, I put it in the break room. And then now the maintenance guy wants it for doing, like for maintenance stuff in there. And so we ran an experiment. He said, could we set it so it would play, like just display a single like frame or whatever, like a image for a period of time and then stop doing it or whatever. And so we ran some tests on it, like on a test unit, and it did exactly what he wants. So now he's debating now putting it up in his maintenance area instead of.
Sorry, hold on. I don't know how I did that.
It's all right.
I must have somehow hit a key on my keyboard. Seriously, I don't know how I did that. I apologize.
There probably is a shortcut for keyboards or something.
So I cut you off when you were talking about, can you show this for a certain duration?
Yep, at a scheduled time, and we tested it out. It worked, and now he's like, oh, I think I want this. So he's going potentially he's going to put that up now as well. And so what's fun is like I'm a nerd. I'm always looking at different things and whatnot. So I see something interesting and kind of file it. And someone says, do you think there's a way we could do, X, Y, or Z? I'm like, I have an idea. And so sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Then it's fun when it works out. But
Well, and to have the leeway to experiment, and that was what was always fun, was the reliance, like the buck stops with you, right? It's up to you to come up with a solution, and whether you're clever enough to do that in some like low cost kind of fun crafty way, or whether you find the right piece of hardware or software, or you consult with someone to get it done. I mean, that was always what I loved, was that it was up to me completely, and ultimately it was my decision. And that I always thought that was a lot of fun. And I feel like I did a fairly reasonably good job. I was early 20s at the time, so very green, but very enthusiastic. boundless energy. Anyway,
Yeah, it's fun implementing solutions for sure. And actually, when they are truly a great success, that's probably the apex of fun in the job. When your solution kind of falls flat, a little bit embarrassing, but
yeah.
I tried
Or
something.
maybe just isn't as good as you'd like it to be,
Right.
because you have a constraint, maybe of budget or time, or um,
Size of the
actually
room.
the other big one, well, yeah, how many things can we fit? Is patience, right? You only have so much patience for non-technical people for technical solutions. So you have to, something that seems trivial, like to us, maybe like clicking or entering data or something might be annoying
Mm-hmm.
to a non-technical person. So yeah, that was usually the case for me.
So speaking of implementation, there's a Jay Lee in the chat brought this up, and I did have this on. Well, I didn't have it on this list here, but I did have it something I recently read, and I thought was to me, it's like we're circling back to an old idea. But the idea is that Germany is now going to it's going to be ditching Windows for Linux for 30,000 some users. Now this happened. I don't remember the date. Was it like 2004-ish?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and it was essentially a really bad. It didn't turn out well for but they ended up
Talking
ditching
about-
back Windows.
You're talking about Munich?
Yes, Munich. That was at Munich. So now this is German state. So this is much wider. But yes, yeah, Munich. They adopted Linux, but the problem they did is they made their own distribution rather than just using an existing distribution.
Yeah.
And so it became a technical liability. And
And they
they're
had
back to Windows.
really ancient computers and some less older computers. They're running Linux, and that was part of the problem because everything was slow with the old computers.
Mm-hmm.
And then once Microsoft came around, they gave them discounts for I don't know if it was just Windows or Office also. And then they also decided because they were going to get Windows, they were going to get new machines.
I remember being Microsoft being very aggressive in that situation.
I mean,
Both from a like standpoint of trying to discredit, but also from the standpoint of major discounts and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes. So I'll read a little bit of this article here, but so Schleswig-Holstein, one of Germany's 16 states, on Wednesday confirmed plans to move tens of thousands of systems from Microsoft Windows to Linux. The announcement follows previously established plans to migrate the state government off Microsoft Office in favor of open source LibreOffice. Except Excel. I'm just saying. As spotted by the Document Foundation, the government has apparently finished its pilot run of LibreOffice and is now announcing plans to expand it to more open source offerings. In 2021, the state government announced plans to move 25,000 computers to LibreOffice by 2026. At the time, Schleswig-Holstein said it had already been testing LibreOffice for 2 years. The announcement, Minister President Daniel Günther's webpage this week, the state's government confirmed that it's moving all systems to the Linux operating system OS 2 per the website provided transition. So, and it goes on. But anyway, so do you think this one might actually stick, or do you think this is just going to be another Munich repeat?
I think Eric was making a good point there for the way that they went about it in Munich being much more difficult to manage.
Mm-hmm. So I was looking for, it's a Debian-based distribution called Vinux, or Winix, but probably Vinux because it's German. Oh wait, no, that's when they crawled back away from. That was the one, but I don't see here in the article where it says what they're going to, like what. I mean, SUSE is right there in Nuremberg, so I would think that they'd probably use SUSE, but who knows? So they're going to use Nextcloud and OpenExchange and Mozilla Thunderbird in conjunction with the Univention Active Directory connector. So, but I don't see, maybe I missed it here. Yeah, I don't know. This is very interesting. So Jaylee says, yes, it will stick, of course. It's much better these days. Yeah, probably.
What would be their biggest downfall from switching to Linux?
Well, I mean, I guess if they're going with LibreOffice and Nextcloud, they could do the collaborative thing with that. So they would have the same kind of Google or Microsoft Office collaboration features. I don't suspect most of the users are going to be using LibreOffice to do very complex spreadsheets. I think that's an edge case situation, and they could always incorporate, if they needed it, they could add Excel or whatever. I think LibreOffice Presenter is better than PowerPoint. I think that Writer is on par with Word. LibreOffice Draw is pretty cool if you want to process and edit PDFs.
Right.
I think the problem is compatibility, because you'll get like little problems and people might start complaining about those little problems. And since people standardize on Microsoft formats, since it's a German state, you think they would be able to say, we're only going to use open document formats, and you must submit it in open document format, because after all, the software to edit and view those softwares is free, freely available. Versus Microsoft, which doesn't even give you something free to do, like edit like a Word document. And they're taking away WordPad soon too.
Really?
Really?
WordPad's going away.
Well, there's still Notepad.
We're looking.
I'm sorry?
There's still Notepad, right?
Yeah, but I'm talking about editing like a document that's more like just text.
Oh, okay.
We're looking at this document, and I think I made the same assumption. It doesn't say anything about them moving to Linux. It says that they're moving to LibreOffice. That might mean that they're going to stay with Windows, and then instead of using Microsoft Office on top of Windows, they might be using LibreOffice. Because I agree with you. I think if they were actually wholesale switching out not only the operating system, Office, but also the operating system. Oh, no. Wait.
It says moving all systems to Linux operating system.
No, it does. Okay, never mind. It says has decided to move from Microsoft Windows and Microsoft Office to LibreOffice and Linux, but you're right, it does not say. Okay, sorry, I answered my
Maybe
question.
maybe it's whatever the employee wants to run. If they want to run Pop or Debian or Antics, they can use it.
Oh yeah, that would end well.
Maybe. I know that that OpenSUSE, you can join a Linux system to a domain. There's that does exist. I have not played with that yet, but I don't know if other distributions do that as well. Do you know? I haven't seen it in any others, but I haven't really looked.
North Korea does have their own distro, right? Red Star OS.
Yeah, good for them.
And I think doesn't that I forgot what the name is. That distro that has like a lot of like very visual appealing and it's Debian based. Don't they get a lot of money from like China?
You're talking about it's the pretty one, right? What's it called?
Yeah,
Deepin.
Deepin. There we go. Does it Deepin get money from China too?
I mean, do you blame them? I mean, if it looks nice and works well.
No, I'm just saying that these are all like government sponsored
Yeah.
distros.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. I think having I like the idea of different distributions for different organizations and so forth. I mean, I think that's just a better. It sounds like it's just a better, less dystopian. We're going to lose all our jobs kind of environment. I think it brings back the possibility of a mom and pop shop to do IT again. You know. So Nate Jones in the chat says, I use PBIS Open for Linux, I think Active Directory accounts. I don't know that one, so I think I need to look that up because that would be interesting. I guess we'll see. Yeah, Beyond Trust. It's an Active Directory bridge open, and there's an open source community project sponsored by Beyond Trust Corporation. All right. Well,
Oh,
that's
I
my
also
homework for the
remember
week.
that Debian Distribution Portis.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a Turkish sponsored distro.
Oh, that's very cool.
Turkey.
So Jaylee says, I could see this working with Ubuntu, or honestly, Kubuntu might be better for Windows users, right? And really, it's better. And really, the better KDE is perhaps KDE Neon. But KDE Neon is not a distribution, right? Is that what they say?
Right.
Yeah, KDE Neon. The problem with KDE Neon is if you try to install anything like Qt based from the repo, you're gonna have a lot of issues with dependencies
New GTK
because
based?
Qt based because they update everything to the latest,
Oh.
even though it's not compatible with the repo for Ubuntu.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I got it. That makes sense.
And it did break on me on the past, so I don't know if that still happens, where you just get like a black screen.
Yeah,
But if you want to test
never used
out
it.
the latest KDE software and Plasma just to test it out, I think it's equivalent to the GNOME distro that they offer too. In that sense,
We have
GNOME
the-
OS or whatever it's
GNOME.
called.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's supposed to be like a testing. It's for testing things out and
Yeah,
proof of concept more so than production system.
I think that's how KDE Neon should be viewed.
Vince in the chat. I'm pretty sure an Australian distro would swear at you instead of any system air sounds. Yeah, probably.
How many word processors are there for Linux? I know about Abby and LibreOffice. Are there any others?
So there's only Office. There's also
Open
Free
Office.
yeah. Well, I think
Oh.
Open Office is dead.
But you say that, but I have seen streamers have that installed as one of their little icons on their
Really?
desktop. Yeah, and I'm like, they're still using OpenOffice. They don't know about LibreOffice.
Free Office is another one. I keep only Office and LibreOffice as well as Microsoft Office installed on my computer because, two's a company, three's a one more. So I also have Office 2013 installed too, and I'm not sure why.
I've been using Abby Word, but when I send it to any clients, it's appearing different as an attachment. So I had to convert it from my email into a PDF format to have it sent.
Oh yeah, if you want like 100% like compatibility, the way people will see it, PDF is the best way to go.
Right. I figured that much.
So I'd really recommend you try only Office, see how that works, and also Free Office. They look and feel a little more like the Microsoft Office,
Uh-huh.
and they seem to have really good for the word processing.
Right.
I would say as far as spreadsheet, LibreOffice is a little bit better than the others.
Right.
So I suppose if you do a mix and match, do a Office a la carte, that might work out for you. Might.
Okay, we'll give it a try.
Yeah. See, Ann Rita says, I just found the origin of Linux Mint in Irish. No wonder they have a green default for their OS.
They're based in Ireland. I don't think a lot of people know that.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Just like most people don't know what the basis for Arch is, I think.
Where's the basis of Arch?
Canada.
Canada.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Canada.
Yes.
Well, hot dog, I had no idea. I didn't know it was based on
I don't know why I knew that.
Well, very cool. Let's see.
I think Abbey Word is it's very good if you use it by yourself, for yourself, for your own notes or something like that, because it's so quick and light. It doesn't take up any resources, but it's not very good for sharing documents in general.
Right, I figured that much because when I shared it and opened it up in the PDF format, it was all jumbled. Was weird looking. So I had to try and do it all over again um, from inside my email because I find some convert tool in my email in regards to having it converted to um, Word document that I'm familiar with. So yeah, that's what I did and edit it from there from my email.
Also, if you want compatibility for LibreOffice for Word documents, you should install the Microsoft fonts because that might make a big difference for how the document ends up looking.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, you could install that from the MX package installer.
Cool. We'll have that done.
You're muted.
I did that on purpose.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure did. So from Bleeping Computers, but also I first actually saw this on Keep It Techie on YouTube. But U.S. Cancer Center City of Hope, they had a data breach that exposed 827,000 patients. So this is pretty wild here. It seems like there's a lot of data breaches. I don't know if we're just hearing about them more or if they're just more fast and furious happening. But the City of Hope is a national cancer institute, a designated comprehensive cancer center providing treatment for cancer, diabetes, and other life-threatening diseases. The organization is headquartered in Dart, California. Is it Dart? Yeah, Duarte, California. It operates oncology clinics across the U.S. Earlier this week, the health organization published a notice of data security incident on its site, informing that it suffered a security breach between September and October last year. Oh, so I guess it took a while to let everybody know, I suppose. This is on or about October 13th of last year. They became aware of the suspicious activity on a subset of its systems and immediately instituted mitigation measures to minimize any disruption to its operations. So the City of Hope launched an investigation into the nature of the scope, the incident with assistance of the leading cybersecurity firm, which determined that an unauthorized third party accessed a subset of our systems and obtained copies of some files between September 19th and October 23rd of last year. Sensitive data that may have been exposed as a result of the incident, including the following, like full names, email addresses, phone numbers, date of birth, social security number, driver's license, government ID, bank account number, credit card details, health insurance information, medical records, and history. So how does one protect oneself from somebody else's cybersecurity systems? It seems like that is like we have to have
The only thing you can really do, well, there's actually a couple of things, but the easiest thing you can do in some sense is lock down your credit because you never know when you're going to be exposed.
okay.
So make sure all the different bureaus, I think there's like 5,
Mhm.
you lock them down and freeze them, and then only open them once you're going to use your credit. And the reason why we have so much news about hacks to companies and websites is because I don't know exactly when it became a law that companies must disclose this now. They have a certain amount of period where they must disclose it, otherwise they're going to get in trouble.
Gotcha.
So it's not so much about them getting in trouble for it happening. It's just they just have to disclose it for now. So the liability is still not there, but transparency it is what it is mandated.
Yeah, that makes sense. The Equifax, that was a big how do you do. That was probably 10 years ago now, 8 years ago, something like that. That was like
Yeah.
a major data breach.
I mean, you figure that's their whole business, right? They have all your information and they can't keep it from getting hacked. Like Why do they need to keep existing if they can't even do that? It's not like they're
Yeah.
the only credit bureau there is, anyways.
Right. It seems like you should have an opt out from credit bureaus. You know,
You could, but then you wouldn't be able to get loans and maybe jobs because some jobs now require a credit check
maybe that needs to change.
and
Maybe that's a bad
bank accounts,
Maybe that's a bad
all these
decision.
things. It's kind of people's decisions, I guess, now of how they treat those things.
Yeah. I know, like long ago, smaller banks didn't use those things for loans. They looked at your income, how much debt you had, and then based it off of that, as opposed to a score by some nameless, faceless corporation. I don't know.
I think it's just easy. A lot of why things are the way they are is because it's easier that way. Instead of them calculating like your assets and your liabilities, well, they'll just hire a company and pay them a fee. Oh, they tell me your credit's such and such. Okay, you qualify. Oh no, you don't qualify. Simple.
Yeah, maybe that needs to
I
change.
think I think a running theme seems to be wherever possible, never employ a human being to do a job the way it should actually be done because it's too expensive. The way that companies cut, you know, cut their budgets, cut their expenses is to the single easiest way is to get rid of employees. And so, I mean, honestly, I think that's the truth for a lot of things is that the corners are cut because the trade-off between hiring the employee and training them and all of the effort that goes into paying them, they they just feel like it's good enough and it doesn't need, you know. And I don't feel like it used to be that way. I think there used to be a certain pride in providing the best possible service or product or whatever. And it was not only did the companies do that, but there was an expectation on the consumer's part that you were getting something of value. And I just feel like that has eroded somewhat to where people just expect to have poor experiences with service. People expect to buy something and have it not be of particularly great quality. You know?
Yeah, I think that anytime you remove the human aspect, I think that's where things just go wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to value
Yep.
humans more. Maybe.
You'd hope, but I guess it's just too expensive to have. I mean, we've seen that with any kind of moderation of content, right? On things like, we talk about the algorithm and all of that stuff, and that's all because of trying to not have to have human beings deal with moderation and oversight and review, all of those type of tasks.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you could argue, yeah, they solved it, but at what cost? So.
Right.
But maybe that's just a pessimistic view. I don't know.
It probably is, but I mean, you're probably not wrong either. I don't know. I like the idea of community, people helping each other out. I don't know. That's what I like. That's actually why I like Linux. It's more community. At least that's what it's historically been anyway. But I don't know. Well, here is a fun article that one of my co-hosts, the lesser of the two, Matt, shared on the tips and tricks in the Telegram group from It's Foss. It's called Cartridges, a simple game launcher with support for Steam, Lutris, and others. So because we don't have enough launchers, here's another launcher for all the launchers called Cartridges. And I think it looks pretty cool. It's GTK based. And I like the idea of having one stop for all your shops, I suppose. Like I have Heroic and I have Steam, and they work great. And because Heroic does like the GOG games, it pulls those in. So I don't know everything. I haven't downloaded it yet, but it says this is the third party open source game launchers like Rare and Heroic game launchers that can act as visible alternatives to the proprietary game clients while also offering many neat features. So yeah, it looks like it is incorporated with this. But anyway, so it's based on GTK 4, and libidweta, so it provides a modern, sleek user interface. And it's also part of the GNOME circles with the following key highlights. Minimal interface, that's not a highlight to me. Easy game sorting, wide platform support. I don't know, do you guys use game launchers ever? No? I use Steam. I use a Steam launcher. I still wonder if it'll run in parallel or how that works to everything else. But it looks like it's worth a try. Yeah, so it's Steam, Lutris, Heroic, Bottles, Itch. That's cool. Legendary, RetroArch, Flatpak. And I think other game entries. So it's pretty cool. It's in the FlatHub store. So if you want to check that out. It's probably been curated by humans, so it shouldn't have any crypto wallet scammers and things in there. So you should be good to go. But anyway,
You got to admit that that's a good name. Cartridges.
yeah, I think it's great. I like it. Yeah, Matt sent that to me directly, and I thought it'd be definitely worth. It's an article came out today from SFOSS. It's definitely gonna be worth a look at, for sure. But anyway, yeah. Any other cool apps that you've found out there? Do you play with? No, nothing. Because we got to think about that in a couple weeks. 3 weeks. We've got another application appetizer. So if you have any ideas, just in case. Well, it is about that time we probably should talk about the next week, which is a distro exploration. So there's been a lot of pressure in the community from somebody. White chocolate. I think you've been saying this for like 6 months now, that we should try Antics.
Yep.
And
Antics.
does anybody have any other thoughts? If not Antics, if something else. I like these more. I guess could we call Antics a very focused distribution, since it's focused on not having a lot to it. But what would
The last time we did it was 2 years ago, April 23rd, Antex live only.
okay?
I think this was a recommendation from Dolphin, if I remember.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember that. 2 years. Wow. Has Saloon been around that long?
It's been longer than that. This is year 3.
Oh, wow. Wow, how time flies, huh? Well, any other thoughts from folks here about using Antex next week? Checking it out? I'm already using it now. Just I downloaded it yesterday.
It's been a long time, yeah, since I've looked at it.
Same here.
Well, okay. Terry, you got your wish. Antics it is. All right. So what are some cool features of Antics you think we should really try out? So if we're gonna talk this thing up, what do you think some things that we should?
You should notice how little resources it uses. One of the lightest distros there
Yes.
is.
Yes. It
Okay.
makes every computer fast. Every computer's fast with Antics on it.
And since it's like MX, there's so many little tricks and abilities that it has.
And extra tools.
Okay. Is there a particular tool that should check it out that you think that I should focus in on, or somebody should focus in on?
All the above.
Well, okay, but is there something specific, like this is really cool? Check it out.
I think you just by looking at the prompt when you start up the distro, all the little options that it gives you, like you can change things in case you want to.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Well, all right. So we'll try and make some active dialogue in the Telegram or Discord or whatever, just to check out if there's any cool features to that. Like I'm using the mem test feature right now. It's running a mem test on a computer. Because it's one of those distributions that still have a mem test when you first boot it up.
Mhm.
So that's a nice little feature. And I wonder how it compares to Puppy. Have we done Puppy Linux in a while? It's been a while probably for Puppy Linux, hasn't it?
I don't think we actually done it in Linux Saloon.
Oh. Well, I think we say it enough times. I think then we'd have
Prophetic will show up.
show up, yeah. So Ron Singh says, "Hey all, wish you could have made it here earlier. Antic sounds good to try. The website ain't no responding though. Am I being dumb?"
No, it isn't working for me either.
With the Antics website's down right now.
Yeah.
It's probably because of all the traffic from Linux Saloon is just
Yeah,
taking it down.
definitely. That's what killed
Probably
it.
it. We crashed the server.
Yeah.
So, do any
Yeah.
of you have old hardware that you could or plan to test this on? Since that's sort of the forte.
Yeah, I'm gonna run it on some old crap.
I do.
Yes.
Gee, really, Nate?
Well, yeah. I mean, I
I'm
guess
shocked.
everyone else.
Since
I-
it's
I'm
based on
shocked.
Debian, they still offer 32-bit in case you have any of that hardware.
Well, I mean, that's what they're touting again is that
Whoa.
This was my first, well, actually it was my second technically, but this is my first real laptop that I used, that I bought like in 2000. Oh, that screen's really wobbly. Back in 2004.
You know what's amazing?
What?
The bezels are really skinny on that for being that old.
Yeah. It is,
Yeah,
isn't it?
Honestly,
Inspiron
amazing.
5100. This thing, it's really.
Yeah, nice and
I
thick.
mean, it's chunky, but it's still. Usually bezels back then are like an inch
Yeah.
wide.
It's got a 1394 port on the back, a couple of USB, got an S video out. This might be fun to play with.
Yep, I had one like that too.
Do you still
So-
have a CRT you can plug in that S video out to?
Of course. do I have a CRT? That's a silly question. It's right there.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna pop it out out of your drawer, like you always do.
Well, I have like everything that I want that I'm working on right now, available. So, oh, cool. I'm definitely gonna try that out. So I ran Mandrake on that back in the day. That was my first distribution. I never ran anything but Mandrake on this actually. But anyway, yeah, I think
That computer, that laptop looked like a VR trooper.
like a what? A real trooper?
VR troopers.
I don't know that.
VR Troopers, the show?
Yep.
I don't know that one.
VR Troopers was kind of like a Power Rangers kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. That's it.
I used that laptop for what 4 years, 4 years, something like that, until I replaced it with my Dell Latitude D630, which I ran that thing for 10 years, same computer for 10 years. Running
And it
Linux.
was old at the time when you bought it, right?
No, I bought it brand new.
Oh, you bought it brand new.
Yep,
Oh, okay.
2007, yeah, and then I retired it in 2017. Not fully, but I still used it a little bit. But yeah.
What do you do
Cool.
when you retire something? You recycle it?
It depends. So this I kept for nostalgia purposes. And then its replacement I also kept for nostalgia purposes.
Autobot.
Yeah. Yep. This one traveled many places around the world with me. It was present for all three of my kids being born playing music. So I'm not getting rid of this. It's just I still turn it on and run tumbleweed updates on it. So anyway, yeah, so I guess I keep it. I don't know. I like my stuff, you know. I got to get rid of some stuff, but I like my stuff. I don't buy a lot of things, so I don't have if I do have a laptop I'm no longer using, I usually give them away and then to people who need them. That's kind of how I operate. But anyway, Well, cool. Antics next week, and we'll see what kind of antics we get into. All right.
Hopefully the website comes back up after we killed it.
Yeah, we killed it.
Let me look at see if it's for me. We'll find out. Oh, it's spinning.
Everybody's clicking right now.
So you can go probably right to SourceForge and get it there.
They're probably thinking we're getting DDoSed.
Yeah, you can go right to SourceForge and download it there. So there's a way you can bypass the website. Although I don't see the other versions. Wait. Final? I don't know here. We'll figure it out. It'll probably be fine tomorrow. I mean, it's a Saturday. They're probably out, having a good time. Probably not thinking about Linux, so that's probably what's going on.
Could also be doing maintenance. You never know.
Yeah. Well, if you have any suggestions for distributions or discussion ideas, applications, or poll ideas, send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, or you can tag Eris or myself in the Telegram or Discord, and you can check it out there as well. So I like email, so I brought it up because Terry did send me an email, and I think I did respond. But yeah, and I've been staying caught up on my emails, so I'm excited about that.
So what's that email again?
Suggestions@linuxsaloon.com. Just in case. Email is cool. I think email is pretty rad. All right. So I guess it's that time for last call. So Eric, you were talking about doing audio editing. Is it in relation to Distro Hopper's Digest?
In fact, it is. Yeah, we just recorded I think it's episode 51, and I'm working on the editing, which is what brought that to mind. And so hopefully I will have that out in the next couple of days.
Excellent. So what are you going to be talking about?
Funny enough, Plasma 6 on top of KDE Neon. And
Sweet.
so a little bit of thoughts on Neon, a little bit of thoughts on Plasma.
Any do you want to give any teasers, or you want to leave it all for the podcast?
Basically I talk about how I used to really be a big Plasma user, and just sort of the progression of the last 10 years or so. And just a lot about how I really don't see Neon as being a great fit for a day-to-day distro, even though they've sort of taken that stance of it being a user edition. I still think there's enough variability, and certainly right now with Plasma 6 sort of just being released and all of that, I think it was not the best base maybe for me to test Plasma 6, I guess is a good way of saying it. So
Okay. I'm running Plasma 6 right now. I would say I have a couple of issues with it, but it's been pretty good. And yeah, it's not too...
it's still very performant. Yeah, I mean, they've changed enough in 6. I still think, that was sort of one of my questions is, yeah, there was a lot of sort of under the hood and technical debt sort of stuff that happened, and some user-facing changes, but I don't know. In my mind, I always think of a major number change as being like there's going to be a very, like, you go to Windows, 10 to 11, there's no it's not 10 with a rebasing something. And so I kind of get why they did it, but I think it could also be a little misleading. And I think in my case, I had slightly different expectations, although I will say that wasn't because I had any technical issues with it. That was more of my expectation.
Well, I think the toolkit is what they changed it to Qt 6 over Qt 5.
Right.
Right. So maybe it's better. I don't know. Well, I saw Steve in the chat, Steve's very own. He does a live stream most Sunday mornings. I don't know if he's doing one tomorrow or not. I think he wasn't doing one last week, and I didn't catch it in time. So sorry about that. But I don't know if he's doing one tomorrow or not. We'll see if he says anything, if he's still listening or whatnot. But anyway,
he posted 8:30 in the morning.
8:30.
I think it's Central Time. for
Yep.
him.
Yep, Central. Excellent. So I'm glad he's doing it because I like the wonderful tones of Steve's very own voice.
Now on YouTube and Twitch.
Ooh. So does he? I'm on Windows, he says. Okay.
Oh,
That's fine.
Uh-oh.
Hey, if it works for you,
He's rediscovering Windows, he says.
he's rediscovering Windows. And how?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's fine. Hey, you know what? Here's the thing. Linux or an operating system is a tool, and if the tool doesn't work for you and you find a better tool, then use a better tool that works for you. That's why I buy DeWalt. All right. So Linux User Space, it's one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. I love I like the Leo and Dan banter. My notes say they're taking a little break traveling with family health. So, but LXD is on the docket, so check that out very soon. linksuserspace.show. Since I do travel for work quite a bit, I do get a lot of podcasts in now when I'm not listening to books on tape. Well, not tape, but audiobooks. I'm old. But anyway, Linux User Space is one of my favorites to listen to. So check that out. linuxuserspace.show or lus.sh, which makes me think of like shell. Anyway. I'm on a podcast called Linux Out Loud. We talked last about building a PC, and I was going to bring that up here, but I don't know, it didn't feel like it really fit. But next week I'll talk about it a little bit. But I built a computer with my oldest. Like we actually put it together. I used the case and all that fun stuff. There'll be an article or something like that eventually on cubiclelate.com. But anyway, so we talked about building computers and the different, and maybe I don't. The issue for me was my boy wanted something a little bit different than I was thinking in my mind, and I felt like he was wrong. But anyway, but we worked that all out now. Anyway, so check that out, Linux Out Loud. A website called cubiclelate.com. I write lots of articles lately because I can for various reasons. And it's been fun for me to finish up all these different little things I want to talk about. I will do one little teaser. I'm working on an article for, it's not released yet. I have an Atari VCS. It's an AMD-based computer that was first announced in 2017 and released in end of 2020. Well, I got one in 2023. So I got one. And so I've done some upgrades to it. End of 22. End of 22 is when I got it. So I did some upgrades. Of course, put OpenSUSE Tumbleweed on it. And it's running pretty great. I use it a lot. It's probably one of my favorite computers to use for casual things. So, but that's coming up pretty soon. Also, my article on living in a Microsoft world with OpenSUSE as well. So check that out, cubiclelate.com if you care. Linux Saloon is part of the Text Digital Network, so check out more great shows at textdigital.com. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, whether it's being a part of the conversation here in the Zoom meeting or on the YouTube chat. Driving a conversation there is a lot of fun. Or watching the show after the fact. Thank you very much for your support. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computers. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers. And please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.